Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos.
The main character, after dying in his previous life, he wakes up as Spider-Man inside of Teen Wolf. What is Spider-Man gonna do inside of Teen Wolf?
Trait. Sometimes. The basketball lights clicked off one bank at a time. Peter stayed sitting. No patrol that night. His wrist hurt. He had learned enough. Before leaving, Derek said, "One more thing." Peter looked. If Deucalion talks, he is already fighting. Peter frowned. Meaning? He wants you to believe the conversation is the choice. Peter thought about Gerard. Peter Hale. He thought about Gerard, Peter Hale, and every manipulator in Beacon Hills who tried to make the offered choice feel like the only one. Manipulators liked narrowing rooms before anyone noticed the doors. Peter nodded. Then I look for the door first. Derek almost smiled. The next day at school, Styles found Peter moving stiffly. Training. Basketball. Styles stared. You hate basketball. I do now. Scott joined. Did Derek hit you? Peter sighed. Styles pointed. I knew it. The friendships were becoming ridiculous enough that bruises sometimes had ordinary-sounding explanations that were accidentally less believable than the truth. Peter accepted that too. Derek's one-line web drill eventually became Peter's favorite because it exposed how greedy he was with options. One web line. That's all. Styles watched one session from the bleachers with a stopwatch. Why a stopwatch? No one knew. Derek stood across the court. Peter could fire one strand total until it detached or broke. No second shot. Derek attacked. Peter waited. The spider sense flared. One line could move Peter now, or restrain Derek later, or save a hypothetical civilian if Derek introduced one. Peter kept it. He dodged physically. Derek attacked again. Peter kept. Third. Still. Styles shouted, "Use the web." Peter ignored. Derek cornered. Peter finally fired at the backboard support and swung over. Line spent. Derek cut on the pass. Now no web. Peter lasted 12 more seconds. Dead, Derek said. Peter hit the floor. Styles looked at stopwatch. 38. Why are you timing? Data. Peter hated. Second run, Peter fired immediately. Moved. Line stayed attached longer. He used it repeatedly as pivot, not one action. Derek tried to cut. Peter changed tension. The strand lasted 45 seconds. Longer than first run total. Then Derek trapped line under his foot. Peter had tied his movement to something opponent controlled. He released deliberately before Derek yanked. No web now. Still better than being pulled. Third run, Derek introduced Isaac at sideline as civilian. Isaac objected to being called civilian. Ignored. Derek attacked Isaac instead. Peter fired web to pull Isaac out. Line spent. Derek turned on Peter. Peter lost quickly. He was frustrated. Derek said, "You did the right thing." I lost. Those are different. Peter stared. The drill forced him to choose what resource meant. Winning fight. Moving. Saving. Peter's web reserve in real life was larger than one line, but every fight eventually became scarce. The practice taught prioritization without actual depletion. Styles added a twist. One line and one phone call. Peter could call one ally once. He laughed. This is becoming a board game. Styles grinned. Derek looked bored. During the drill, Peter waited too long to call because he wanted to prove he could solve. Lost. Next run, he called Isaac immediately to move an obstacle. One more space. Did not win fight. Better. The message was humiliatingly clear. Options did not become more valuable by hoarding them until the perfect moment. Sometimes the best use was early enough to change the whole scene. Peter applied it to real operations. Call sheriff before entering if police likely. Tell Allison before hunter sight. Tell Deaton before unknown toxin. Tell May where. Information early became a resource too. Derek had intended to teach combat. Styles had accidentally taught communication. Peter got both. The court session ended with Styles trying one web line himself. Peter attached a safe strand to a pole and let him swing 1 foot off ground. Styles screamed. Derek walked away. Isaac laughed. Peter immediately lowered. Styles landed. Again. No. Why? You are not the training dummy. Rude. The normal stupidity after serious lessons mattered. Peter could learn without turning every practice into a prophecy about the next fight. Asterisk Chapter 34, The Stranger's Revelation. Derek found Peter treating a torn glove in the loft and assumed the wrong thing. Who got you? Peter looked up. No one. Derek's eyes narrowed at the cut near Peter's palm. That is blood. Glass. Where? Chemistry. Derek remained suspicious. Peter held up the glove. Sometimes school is dangerous without being supernatural. Derek leaned against a pillar. The loft smelled like dust and rain through broken windows. Peter had come because Derek promised information about the Alpha Pack. Instead, they spent 5 minutes arguing about a lab accident. That was probably healthy. Derek finally sat across. Deucalion is recruiting. Scott. Derek's pack first, mine. Peter looked. Isaac. Derek's beaters. Why? Power. That's never the whole reason. Derek looked annoyed. Deucalion thinks packs are stronger when the Alpha breaks everyone else's options. Peter heard the theme immediately. Join or die. More complicated, same result. Derek told him about the Alpha Pack. Different Alphas. Different histories. Some cursed. Some willing. Deucalion had built unity through fear, power, and severed loyalties. Peter listened. Then asked, why do you think your pack would choose him? Derek's face hardened. The question was painful. Peter almost apologized. Derek answered anyway. Because I've given them reasons not to trust me. Honest. That surprised Peter. Derek had bitten teenagers partly to build power and protect. He had also decided for them what danger they entered. Isaac's life before the bite was terrible. That did not make every choice Derek made clean. Peter said, then don't solve it by controlling harder. Derek looked at him. Is that your advice? Yes. You don't lead anyone. Exactly. Derek almost smiled. The conversation shifted when Peter noticed a scratch in the dust near the stairs. 3 lines. Deliberate. Not Derek. Spider sense prickled. He crouched. Derek came. Send. Unknown person. Peter looked at the lines. Not hunter symbol he knew. A warning marker. They did not touch. Derek tracked to the roof. The scent ended. Alpha Scout. Watching. Peter's training visit had been observed. That mattered. Deucalion now knew Spider-Man, and Derek spoke privately. He might frame alliance. Another narrative trap. Peter sighed. Can nobody just let two people have an uncomfortable conversation? Derek looked at him. No. They checked the building. No attack. No planted explosive. The observer had wanted to be noticed. A message without text. You are watched. Peter refused to respond dramatically. He did not change meeting location immediately. That would confirm the pressure worked. He and Derek finished the conversation, then left separately. At the stairwell, Derek said, "You still don't trust me." Peter looked. No. Derek nodded. Good. Peter blinked. Derek continued. Trust enough to work together, not enough to forget what I am. That was more mature than Peter expected. Peter thought about the mask. I want the same. Derek looked. Then stop assuming everyone needs either your face or nothing. Peter frowned. What does that mean? You give people a lie until you decide they deserve everything. Peter's stomach tightened. Derek had seen it. May had gotten partial truth before full. Allison still had fragments. Chris had evidence. Lydia had a warning. There were levels between secrecy and confession. Peter knew. He just hated navigating them. Derek said, sometimes a half-truth is the honest boundary. Peter looked out at the daylight, reaching the loft. That sounds manipulative. It can be. Of course. No rule solved all. Peter left without promising anything. On the stairs, he found another mark in the dust. Not from the scout. Derek's claw line from an old fight, perhaps. Two histories overlapping. That was Beacon Hills. Nothing stayed one meaning for long. At school later, Allison asked why Peter had dust on his jacket. He said, old building. True. She asked, which one? Peter smiled. That's the boundary. Allison laughed. She did not push. A small, successful half-truth. Peter wrote nothing about it. Some skills were better practiced than turned into doctrine. Asterisk chapter 35. The Stranger's Warning asterisk. The symbol behind the stage looked like decoration until Lydia refused to step near it. The school was preparing for a ceremony. Paper banners. Folding chairs. A cheap arch over the stage. Peter helped because May had volunteered him after learning he needed more normal responsibilities. He had been carrying chairs when spider sense began buzzing. Not sharp. Deep. Under the floor. Lydia entered with a box of programs. She stopped. Peter saw. Her eyes fixed on the stage. What? Nothing. Peter put the chairs down. Lydia. She frowned. You feel it. That was answer. They waited until the room cleared. Peter locked no door. He only put a chair in the hall with a note that setup was temporarily closed. Lydia stood near the aisle. Peter moved behind the stage. A symbol had been painted beneath black fabric. Circular. Roots. A pattern he did not recognize. His warning grew. He did not touch. Lydia whispered, "It's wrong." Peter looked. How? I don't know. He accepted. Styles arrived after a text. Then Scott. Peter made them stop at the edge. No crowd. Styles looked offended. Why am I a crowd? Because 4 people staring at a murder symbol is how Beacon Hills starts a Tuesday. Styles accepted. They photographed. Deaton came later. His face changed. Druidic. Peter looked toward the floor. Ritual. Potentially. Deaton said enough to introduce the Darach pattern. Sacrifices. Threefold categories. Something gathering power through ritual deaths. Peter thought about Lydia sensing bodies. The previous death. Connections. The symbol at a school ceremony was not random. Someone wanted access to students, or to a place where many people would be present. They removed the stage section physically after Deaton neutralized the active part. Peter did not web it into oblivion. Evidence mattered. The school administration received a boring explanation: mold and unsafe flooring. The ceremony moved to gym. No panic. The next day, Jennifer Blake, the English teacher, stood near the original stage entrance. She smiled at Peter. You helped with setup. Badly. I heard there was damage. Floor issue. Her eyes lingered half a beat too long. Spider Sense whispered. Not enough. Peter did not accuse. Lydia joined. Jennifer looked at Lydia. The warning deepened. Again. Not attack. Significance. Peter hated it. Jennifer asked, everything okay? Peter smiled. Decorations were ugly. Lydia laughed once. Jennifer's smile stayed. Later, Lydia said, you felt it around her. Yes. Then why didn't you say anything? Because my sense doesn't come with subtitles. Lydia looked frustrated. Peter continued. If I accuse everyone who makes it react, I become the danger. That landed. They watched. Not stalked. Observed public behavior. Jennifer was kind to students. Helped one after class. No obvious villain. The warning did not erase those facts. Then another ritual death occurred. A teacher from another school. The pattern matched. Styles mapped. Deaton narrowed categories. Peter found a thread of mud near the scene containing the same root-like mineral residue as the stage mark. Connection. Jennifer had been near the stage, but so had dozens. No proof. Scott had his own suspicions. Derek had a relationship with Jennifer developing. That made accusation even more dangerous. Peter did one thing. He told Derek what he had. Not conclusion. Symbol under school stage. Same residue at ritual death. My sense reacts around Jennifer, but I don't know why. Derek's face changed. He wanted to deny. Peter saw. I am not saying she's the Darach. Derek looked away. But you're saying watch. I'm saying this is what we know. Derek nodded reluctantly. That was friendship, maybe not respect. The next ceremony went ahead safely in the gym. Peter attended as Peter Parker. No mask. Lydia sat nearby. Jennifer stood at the back. Peter's spider sense whispered the whole time. He did not act. Nothing happened. That was hard. The following night, a false rescue call drew Spider-Man into the preserve. Jennifer was waiting. The warning became a scream. Now they had more. Not everything. Enough to change the next chapter. Jennifer's public kindness made suspicion harder. Peter watched her help a student who had forgotten an assignment. No cruelty. No hidden threat. She stayed after class to review. The spider sense whispered anyway. Peter hated that. Lydia stood beside him at the lockers. You look like you want her to do something evil. I want the warning to make sense. That's not the same. No. Close. Peter looked. Lydia continued. If she kicked a puppy right now, you'd feel relieved. He hated how accurate. That would be bad. Yes. The desire for evidence could become desire for guilt. Peter backed off. He stopped personally watching Jennifer for 2 days. Not because cleared. Because his observation had become biased. Scott watched public behavior. Derek, emotionally involved, was told to watch less, not more. Styles checked ritual records. Deaton checked druid symbols. Lydia tracked death signals. Different evidence channels. This distributed suspicion reduced the chance Peter's spider sense became judge. During those 2 days, Jennifer taught normally. No ritual event at school. Then a new death occurred miles away, while Jennifer had a classroom full of witnesses. Styles said, alibi. Peter looked. For direct action. Right. Could still be remote. Could be another person. No conclusion. The case became harder. That was good for accuracy. They found mud residue tying a ritual site to a path Jennifer had used days earlier, but not exclusive. Then Derek voluntarily said Jennifer had asked strange questions about the Nemeton. That was new. No coercion. He had begun seeing. Peter did not say, I told you. That would make Derek regret sharing. They built. The eventual false rescue call became decisive because Jennifer directly manipulated Peter and the student. Before that, the group had resisted forcing the answer. After exposure, Lydia asked Peter, do you feel vindicated? No. Why not? Because being right now doesn't make me right 2 days ago. Lydia smiled faintly. Good. Peter looked suspicious. Don't. She laughed. The lesson mattered beyond Jennifer. The next person his sense reacted around did not automatically become suspect. Sometimes danger was attached to them. Sometimes directed at them. Sometimes they were frightened. Sometimes Peter was remembering. He began asking, what else supports this? Not as a note every time. As habit. The spider sense remained incredible. Peter's judgment had to remain separate. Otherwise, the power would become a shortcut into exactly the certainty manipulators wanted him to have. Asterisk chapter 36, The Stranger's Words. The voice on the phone belonged to a student Peter knew. That was why he went. The girl sounded injured. Breathing fast. She gave a location in the preserve. Peter called the number back. No answer. He texted Scott and Styles before leaving. No solo secret. Then masked. The preserve was too quiet. Spider sense warned before he reached the clearing. Peter stopped in a tree. Below, a backpack lay beside blood. No person. Bait. He did not descend. Jennifer. Silence. Then her voice came from behind him. You learned. Peter jumped. Too late. A black root-like line wrapped his wrist. Not physical plant. Druidic binding. He fired web. The strand struck a tree and pulled him sideways. The binding tightened. Jennifer stood between trunks. No teacher smile now. That sense of yours is irritating. Peter landed against bark. You should try email. She moved one hand. The ground shifted. Roots rose. Spider sense screamed from every direction. Peter did not trust the loudest signal. He looked. The roots were herding him toward a stone circle. A trap boundary. He anchored both wrists to opposite trees. When the roots pushed, he did not move where they wanted. The webbing stretched. His shoulders screamed. Jennifer looked almost impressed. You tied yourself. To the exits. The root snare reached. Peter fired a web at a fallen branch outside the circle and pulled it across the carved line. The ritual boundary broke for a second. He released one wrist. Swung sideways. Jennifer sent a blast. Peter hit a tree. Pain. The black marks under his skin appeared where the magic struck. Not venom. Something invasive. He looked at his forearm. Jennifer said, "You don't belong to any line I know." Popular theme. She approached. Not wolf, not hunter, not emissary, not druid. Peter pushed himself up. Teenager. She smiled. That may be the most dangerous category. The conversation was part of the trap. Derek's warning about Deucalion applied here too. Peter's sense flared from the backpack. Not Jennifer. He looked. The bag moved. A real heartbeat. The student was there, hidden beneath a glamour or behind roots. The bait was also real. Jennifer had doubled the choice. Peter moved for the bag. Jennifer attacked. He took the hit. Not because reckless. Because the student's heartbeat was weakening. Peter tore the roots aside. A girl lay bound, unconscious but alive. He webbed her to his chest with a harness and jumped. Jennifer's magic hit the tree behind. Peter swung. The added weight changed rhythm. He nearly clipped branches. Spider sense warned. He adjusted. Jennifer followed through the woods with impossible speed, not vampire wolf speed, but paths opening for her. Peter refused to fight. Objective, get the student out. At the road, Scott and Styles arrived. Scott's eyes flashed. Jennifer stopped inside the tree line. No need to expose herself further. Peter lowered the student. Styles called emergency services. Scott stared into woods. That was her. Peter nodded. Now evidence. Direct. No more uncertainty. Still, Peter had to remember the earlier stage, where suspicion had been incomplete. Being right later did not make acting early safe. At Deaton's clinic, the black marks on Peter's arm remained for hours. Deaton examined. Druidic residue. Can it control me? Unknown. Peter closed his eyes. Of course. They tested simple movement. No compulsion. But the marks intensified near the Nemeton. Connection. Jennifer had tagged him. Maybe tracking. Peter's first instinct was to cut or burn them. Deaton stopped. Could worsen. So they waited. The marks faded after Deaton used a neutralizing wash of ash and herbs. Peter hated needing an adult solution he didn't understand. Also appreciated it. The rescued student survived. She remembered only a teacher voice and darkness. Peter did not push her for testimony. Jennifer was exposed to the core group now. Derek took it worst. Peter found him outside the loft. Derek's face was stone. You warned me. I gave you uncertainty. Same thing. No. Derek looked. Peter continued. If I had been wrong, you would have destroyed something based on my sense. Derek's anger broke into grief instead. I was wrong. Yes. Peter did not absolve. He stayed. Sometimes that was the useful thing. Jennifer's ritual was still moving towards something larger. The Nemeton. Sacrifices. A storm. They needed a plan. Peter's wrists hurt. The student's pulse was stable. The false rescue had taught him that suspicion could be manipulated and compassion could be bait. He refused to respond by becoming less compassionate. He would become harder to root. Asterisk chapter 37. The Stranger in the Woods. The Nemeton felt wrong before Peter reached the clearing. His spider sense did not scream. It pulled. Every direction inward. That was worse. Scott's pack had split responsibilities before entering. Lydia tracking the ritual pattern. Styles coordinating locations. Derek and Scott confronting Jennifer. Allison and Chris moving captives. Spider-Man handling paths and extraction. No one person the plan. The storm turned the preserve into mud and noise. Peter swung low because wind made high lines dangerous. He reached the storm cellar first. 3 captives. Ritual tools around them. Jennifer's magic in the roots. Peter did not touch the symbol. He webbed the tools themselves from outside the pattern and yanked them away one at a time. 1 blade. 1 bowl. 1 bound branch. The ritual flickered. Not broken. Jennifer felt. A pressure wave through Peter through roots. His back hit wood. Pain. The Nemeton appeared beneath him. Old stamp. Power. His spider sense went silent for 1 terrifying second. Not suppressed like the red filament. Overwhelmed. Too much signal. Peter moved away. The sense returned. Good. He did not climb onto the Nemeton again. Scott arrived with Derek. Jennifer followed. No more teacher mask. The fight spread. Peter kept to his role. Captives. Exit. Web lines through the cellar to create paths. Allison cut restraints. Chris carried 1 injured person. Lydia shouted about the ritual sequence. Styles found a second anchor. Everyone filled spaces. Jennifer attacked Scott. Derek intercepted. Peter could have tried to web her directly. Instead, he tore the next ritual object from the ground. Power dropped. Jennifer turned on him. Stop. Peter said no. Simple. She sent roots. Peter's warning returned in fragments. He trusted people instead. Derek. Derek shouted, left. Peter went left without knowing why. A root spear passed where his chest had been. Scott shouted, down. Peter dropped. Magic crossed overhead. Lydia called, the bowl. Peter saw. 3rd anchor. He webbed. Pulled. The ritual collapsed another degree. Jennifer screamed. Not defeated. Weakened. The captives moved. That was the win condition. Peter stayed until every living non-combatant cleared. Then the fight changed. Scott and Derek had to decide what happened to Jennifer. Peter did not make the choice for them. He kept the exit open. Fire, lightning, storm. A tree fell across the path. Peter webbed 2 trunks and held long enough for Allison and Chris to pass. Web reserves draining. His back pain worsened. No heroic finish. By the time Jennifer fell, Peter was on 1 knee holding a collapsing cellar beam. Scott helped lift. Derek dragged the last injured person The supernatural climax ended with manual labor. That felt right. Afterward, the Nemeton remained. No villain death erased it. Deaton explained that the sacrifices and ritual had awakened something. Beacon Hills would become a beacon. More supernatural attention. Peter looked at the stump. Because we stopped her. Because events have consequences beyond intent. Of course, Peter did not blame the rescue. He accepted the new fact. The town was changing. Again. The next morning, bruises covered his back in a root-like pattern. May saw. She said nothing for a full minute. Then, scale of 1 to 10. 7. Clinic. Deaton already checked. Good. Peter went to school late. Styles looked worse than him. Scott exhausted. Lydia quiet. Derek absent. The classroom felt normal enough to be offensive. Mr. Harris gave them a quiz. Peter stared at the paper. Styles whispered, "Did we save the town last night to fail chemistry?" Peter almost laughed. Apparently. The first question was easy. Peter answered. The world did not pause for supernatural aftermath. That was good. At lunch, they sat together without discussing the Nemeton for 10 full minutes. Then Styles said, "Okay, I have a theory." Everyone groaned. Peter smiled. Beacon Hills had survived the Darach. It had not become safe. But Peter no longer felt like he had to be the person who solved every impossible thing alone. The Nemeton was awake. The pack was still here. So was he. That would have to be enough for the next problem. Asterisk Chapter 38, Spider Sense and Second Chances. Styles laughed at a joke that had no joke in it. Peter noticed, because Styles was funny even when he was terrified. This laugh was shaped correctly and empty behind the eyes. They were in Styles's bedroom after midnight. Scott had gone home. Sheriff Stalinsky was working. Peter sat on the floor beside a pile of books about Japanese folklore while Styles paced. "You okay?" Peter asked. "Perfect." The spider sense pulled toward the empty space beside Styles. Not Styles himself. Beside. Peter stood slowly. Styles stopped pacing. "What?" "Nothing." That was the wrong answer. The smile on Styles's face widened. Peter changed. "Something feels wrong." The smile vanished. "With me?" "I don't know." "Honest." Styles looked offended and frightened at the same time. That's reassuring. Peter did not scan him physically. No grabbing, no webbing, no dramatic accusation. He looked at the room. Window. Mirror. Computer screen. Shadow behind the open closet. The warning shifted every time Styles blinked. That was the part Peter hated. It was not a fixed threat. It was tied to attention. Styles sat. "I haven't been sleeping." Peter knew. "How long?" "Days." "Dreams." Styles looked away. That was yes. Peter's phone buzzed. "Lydia." One line. Do not let him sleep alone. Peter's stomach tightened. He showed Styles. Styles laughed again. "Empty." "Great. Even Lydia thinks I'm haunted." Peter crouched across from him. "Do you want me to call Scott?" "No." "Your dad?" "No." "Deaton." Styles hesitated. "Maybe." That mattered. Peter called Deaton. The veterinarian arrived with none of the theatrical equipment Styles expected. He asked questions. No magic test. No accusation. What did Styles remember? What gaps? What dreams? Any waking hallucinations? Styles answered, increasingly angrily. Peter stayed near the door. His spider sense kept pointing at that empty space. Finally, Styles shouted, "Stop looking at me like I'm about to attack you." Peter flinched. "You're right." Everyone stopped. Peter stepped into the hallway. Not abandonment. Space. If you want me outside, I'm outside. Styles stared. The false pressure eased slightly. Interesting. Something wanted Peter's fear, centered on Styles. He refused. Sheriff Stalinsky came home at 2. He found Deaton, Peter, and Styles awake. What happened? Styles opened his mouth. Peter did not answer for him. Styles said, "I think something is wrong with me." His father's face changed. No jokes. No denial. He sat. Okay. That word almost broke Styles more than fear had. The sheriff did not understand Nojitsun. He understood his son saying help. That mattered. Later, Peter found an audio file on Styles's phone. A laugh recorded while Styles had supposedly been asleep. His voice. Then a second voice beneath. Peter listened once. The spider sense screamed. He deleted it reflexively. Stopped. Restored from trash. Evidence. Pretending the sound did not exist would not protect anyone. He copied it to Styles's laptop and Deaton's recorder. Then left the original. No hoarding alone. The first time Styles lost several minutes while awake, Peter was there. One moment Styles was sitting. The next he stood by the door, holding Peter's mask. Peter's blood went cold. He had not seen him take it. Styles looked down. What the hell? Peter took the mask slowly. Do you remember? No. Styles's face went white. The threat had crossed from dreams into body. Peter wanted to web his wrists. Lock the door. Contain. He did none yet. Do you want to go to Deaton's? Styles nodded. They went. On the drive, Styles said, "If it takes me over, you stop me." Peter looked at the road. Yes. Whatever it takes. Peter's jaw tightened. Don't make me promise to kill you. Styles laughed bitterly. Everybody says that until someone actually becomes the monster. Peter glanced at him. Jackson said the same thing. Styles went quiet. Peter continued. We kept him alive. Different. Yes. No guarantees. No. Still trying. Yes. That was the only honest promise. At Deaton's, the word finally came. Nojitsun. A dark spirit feeding on chaos, strife, pain. Possession. Peter's spider sense, reacting to the gap beside Styles, made sense now. The threat was not Styles exactly. It lived through him. That distinction became critical. Peter added no rule that night. He sat beside Styles until sunrise. No mask. No patrol. When Styles finally slept under Deaton's watch, Peter stayed because leaving felt wrong. The spider sense pulsed periodically toward the sleeping body. Peter acknowledged it. Did not attack. Danger could be present inside someone he loved, without turning the person into the danger itself. Beacon Hills had taught him that lesson with Scott. Jackson. Now Styles. The third time hurt more, because he had no excuse left not to understand. The night before Deaton named the Nojitsun, Peter took Styles for a drive because staying in the bedroom had become another kind of trap. No destination. No supernatural sight. No preserve. They drove through Beacon Hills with the windows cracked. Styles kept looking at reflections. Dark storefront glass. Side mirror. Phone screen. Peter noticed. Want them covered? No. You sure? No. Peter nodded. They kept. The rule for the drive was simple. If Styles lost time, Peter stopped the car. If Peter's spider sense fired, he said it instead of reacting silently. If either wanted to go home, they went. Styles chose music. Bad music. Loud enough to give his mind something ordinary to push against. At a gas station, Styles bought sour candy and forgot the pin for his debit card. He froze. Peter watched panic spread. Do you know where you are? Gas station. Your name. Styles. Mine. Peter. What did we come in for? Candy. Good. The pin returned a minute later. No possession, dramatic takeover. Just a gap. Styles hated it. They sat on the curb. I don't know which parts are me. Peter looked at him. He had heard similar fear from Jackson. Scott during first transformations. Now Styles. You don't have to solve identity tonight. Easy for you. Peter almost laughed. Styles looked. Peter said, no, actually. He had another name inside his history. Alias. A life nobody here remembered. But Styles did not know. Peter could share. He wasn't ready. Not tonight. Instead, I wake up sometimes feeling like Peter Parker is a life I inherited instead of chose. Styles stared. What does that mean? Peter realized he'd stepped close. Just moving here, new memories, new powers, everything changed fast. Not the full reincarnation. A half-truth shaped to the question. Styles accepted because he was tired. Does it get better? Some parts. They drove again. At a red light, Styles started laughing. The wrong laugh. Peter's spider sense pulled to the passenger seat. He did not slam brakes. They were stopped already. Styles. The laugh continued. Peter put the car in park. Styles, look at me. The head turned. The eyes were Styles. The smile wasn't. Peter. The voice became softer. Would you kill me if I asked? Peter's stomach dropped. This was not Styles asking. The spirit was testing boundaries. Peter did not answer the question. You don't get to ask for him. The smile widened. He's afraid you will. Peter's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I know. He's afraid you won't. That hurt. Both. Styles feared becoming dangerous. Feared dying. Contradictory. Human. The spirit fed on impossible choices. Peter saw. You want me to pick which fear is real? Silence. Both are. The smile faltered. Peter continued. He can be afraid I won't stop him, and afraid stopping means killing him. The streetlight turned green behind. Cars honked. Peter did not move. He put hazards on. A driver swore and went around. Ordinary city irritation around possession. The spirit whispered. You always need a third answer. No. Peter looked directly. I just refuse when you pretend there are only two. Styles's face twitched, then collapsed forward. Peter caught his shoulder. Styles. A groan. Why are people honking? Relief. Peter breathed. Because you're a terrible passenger. Styles looked at the hazard light. Then Peter. Did I lose time? 2 minutes. What happened? Peter told him. All of it. No withholding to protect. Styles closed his eyes. It knows what I'm afraid of. Yeah. That's bad. Yeah. Did you answer? No. Styles looked. Peter explained. The false binary. Kill or fail. Save or control. Styles listened. Then said, That's annoyingly insightful. Thank you. I hated saying that. They moved the car. At home, Sheriff Stalinsky was waiting. Styles chose to tell him about the blackout. Peter stayed. The sheriff looked at Peter. Did you feel it? Yes. Can you stop it? No. Honest. What can you do? Peter thought. Notice when something changes. Keep Styles from being alone if he wants. Call Deaton. Stop his body if he attacks. Not assume the thing using him gets to define him. The sheriff absorbed. Then he looked at his son. Do you want Peter staying tonight? Styles nodded. Peter slept on the floor. Not much sleep. At 4 a.m., Styles woke from a nightmare. No possession. Just fear. Peter was there. That mattered more than any clever line in the car. The Nojitsun fed on chaos. Peter's response that night was not a fight. It was staying in one ordinary room with the door open and the light low until morning. Asterisk Chapter 39. The Stranger in Beacon Hills. The closed arcade had no electricity. Every machine was still lit. That told Peter enough. He stood outside with Scott and Lydia. Styles had texted them an address. Or the Nojitsun had. The message used Styles's phone. No distinction possible from text alone. Peter wore the mask. Scott looked at the front doors. Trap. Yes. Lydia tilted her head. Still going in. Peter looked at her. You came. She shrugged. Someone has to tell you when the screaming changes. Fair. They entered. The first row of arcade machines displayed ordinary attract screens. The second showed photographs. Scott as a wolf. Lydia at the funeral home. Peter in the laundromat mask. Not public photos. Memories. The third row showed Styles. Different versions. Crying. Laughing. Dead. Smiling. Peter's spider sense became a storm. Every screen could mean harm. That made the warning almost useless. He remembered Derek. Do not trust the warning completely. Trust people. Lydia. She closed her eyes. None of those are him. Scott listened. No heartbeat. Screens. Illusions. They moved. Peter webbed machines together in clusters, not to destroy, but to stop hidden panels from separating paths. The first trap came from the floor. A tile collapsed under Scott. Peter caught with a web line. Second trap, gas from an arcade cabinet. Lydia heard a hiss before Peter sensed. She shouted. Peter tore the cabinet vent away and webbed the nozzle. Third, Styles's voice from a prize counter. Peter. He stopped. The voice sounded tired. Real enough. Scott looked. Don't. Peter said, I know. The prize counter opened. Styles stood behind it. Human. Pale. Hands visible. Peter's spider sense pointed straight at him. Styles said, "It's me." Peter's throat tightened. "Prove it." Styles laughed. This one had humor. "Your first mask looked like a burglar who lost a fight with a ski shop." Scott almost smiled. Peter did not. The Nojitsun had access to Styles's memories. Private jokes did not prove. Styles saw. "Right." Lydia stepped closer. "Say my name." "Lydia." "No." She looked at him. "Say it like you did before." Styles's face changed. The Nojitsun could know words. Maybe not emotional pattern. He said her name again. Lydia flinched. "Wrong." Styles smiled. "Not Styles." The arcade lights exploded. Chaos. The body moved. Too fast for Styles normally. The Nojitsun had borrowed supernatural strength from possession. Peter dodged. Scott attacked but pulled strikes. The thing used Styles's voice. "Hit me harder." Scott hesitated. That was the weapon. Peter webbed legs. The body cut free with a hidden blade. Human hands still. Peter could not treat him like a werewolf. Fragile. He switched to environment. Webbed jacket to machine. Then shoes. Then wrists wide enough not to cut circulation. The Nojitsun laughed. Everyone wants Styles tied down now. Peter's stomach turned. The spirit wanted every rescue to look like violation. Lydia shouted from behind the machines. "Peter!" He looked. One screen showed a different Styles. Not performance. A memory of the real Styles, trapped in an internal hallway maybe. Lydia's banshee perception found. The spirit attacked her. Peter moved. Not toward Styles' body. Toward Lydia. He took a blade slash across the suit and pulled her clear. Scott used the opening to hold the possessed body without striking. Styles. The lights flickered. For 1 second, Styles's face looked terrified. Then the Nojitsun returned. Closer. Information. The person was still present. They needed separation, not destruction. The arcade itself was part of the ritual field. Peter saw root-like, black wiring behind cabinets. Nemeton influence. He started marking machines that displayed false memories. 1, 3, 5. The pattern formed a loop. Lydia saw. Break the loop. Peter did not smash. He disconnected power lines physically from each marked machine. One by one. The screens died. The spirit screamed through speakers. Scott held. Last machine. Peter pulled the plug. Dark. Styles collapsed. Not cured. But the active projection broke. They carried him out. At Deaton's, Styles woke human for 8 minutes. Enough to talk. He looked at Peter. Did I hurt anyone? Not tonight. Did you? Peter knew what he meant. Not you. Styles breathed out. Then the Nojitsun pressure returned. His eyes changed. Deaton's containment took over. Peter stepped back. No hero speech. The arcade had taught them something. The spirit needed chaos and false branches. It fed when everyone reacted to competing versions. The answer was not certainty. It was coordinated trust. Lydia identified false memory. Scott held the person. Peter changed environment. Distinct roles. The next fight would need more of that. At school the next morning, Peter saw a flyer for the closed arcade. Coming soon, renovation. He stared. The owner had no idea what happened. Normal businesses would reopen over supernatural scars. Beacon Hills always layered ordinary life on top. Peter hoped that was resilience and not denial. Probably both. Asterisk chapter 40. The Stranger in the Trees, asterisk. The police evidence room made Spider-Man look guilty. That was deliberate. Sheriff Stalinsky had 3 web samples from crime scenes where Peter had never been. Same visual texture. Same white fibers. One problem. Wrong knots. Styles saw first. He called Peter after midnight. My dad has web evidence. Peter's stomach dropped. From where? 3 assaults. Peter masked and met Styles on the station roof. Not inside, initially. Show me photos. Styles had copied case images without taking evidence. Peter looked. The planted strands mimicked his web. But whoever made them had tied fixed knots manually. Peter almost never tied physical knots. His organic strands fused through adhesion. Styles pointed. Exactly. Peter looked at him. You know my knot habits. I know too much. The sheriff entered the roof stairwell. Both froze. He looked at Spider-Man. Then his son. Then back. Styles said, Dad. The sheriff's eyes closed for 1 second. Of course. Peter stayed near the edge. No attack. No run yet. Sheriff Stalinsky looked at the mask. You have been in my town for months. Yes. You've been around my son. Yes. That's not reassuring. Styles said, he's helped. His father gave him a look. Peter heard the real problem. The sheriff had been expected to protect a town, while everyone around him kept deleting half the map. Peter said, the web in your evidence room isn't mine. Sheriff's face tightened. How do you know? Pattern. Convenient. Yes. Can you prove it? Peter looked at Styles. Then at the station. He could sneak in. Tamper. Bad. I can show you what mine looks like fresh. The sheriff stared. Peter raised one wrist. With your permission. That surprised him. Here. Clean surface. Sheriff pointed to a metal utility plate near the wall. Peter fired one thin strand. No knot. Adhesive spread. The sheriff approached. Did not touch bare. He photographed. Styles said, the fake ones are tied. The sheriff looked. Could you tie yours? Yes. They're not proof. Peter nodded. Correct. The answer earned a fraction of trust. The sheriff said, come downstairs. Peter hesitated. Police station. Masked vigilante. Styles whispered, you can leave. The exit remained. Peter chose to enter. The evidence room smelled of dust and gun oil. The planted web samples sat sealed. Peter's spider sense prickled near one bag. Not from the fiber. A tiny red mark on the seal. The perception-dampening filament technology. Someone had handled evidence with it. Peter pointed. That. The sheriff looked. What? Don't open yet. They called Deaton, could not easily bring him to police. Peter used a handheld detection strip from his kit. The red residue dampened his sense when close. Proof of manipulation beyond web. Sheriff Stalinsky stared. What exactly am I looking at? Peter could keep secrets. or give enough. Something that interferes with supernatural perception. The word supernatural entered openly. The sheriff did not laugh. His son's life had long crossed that line. Styles looked relieved. The sheriff asked, "Are you one?" Peter thought. Yes, in the broad sense. Not identity. Not origin. Enough. The planted evidence became a controlled investigation. No public claim. The sheriff compared chain of custody. One deputy transfer showed a gap. Not corrupt deputy necessarily. Someone had accessed during transport. They traced camera footage. A hooded figure. No face. The threat was broader than the Nojitsun. Someone studying Spider-Man methods. Maybe connected to red filament. Peter did not combine without evidence. At the end, the sheriff asked everyone else to leave. Styles protested. "Dad, 2 minutes." Styles looked at Peter. Peter nodded. The door closed. Sheriff Stalinsky faced Spider-Man. "Do I know you?" Peter's heart stopped. The mask suddenly felt like paper. The sheriff continued. "My son trusts you like he trusts people he knows." Peter said nothing. "I've seen your height. Your jokes are bad in familiar ways. You move like someone who knows the school." Spider-Sense gave no warning. No threat. Just truth approaching. Peter could lie. He chose a boundary. "You probably know Peter Parker." The sheriff's eyes sharpened. Not confirmation, exactly. "Close." Peter said, "I'm not asking you to forget what you notice." "Then what?" "Don't make Styles responsible for keeping it from you." That landed. The sheriff sat. "My son has been lying to me for months. To protect people. Doesn't make it good." No. Peter knew. May. Secrets. The sheriff looked at the evidence bags. "Does May know?" Peter froze. Too close. Then answered. "Enough." The sheriff breathed. Good. Not approval of vigilante. Relief an adult was not blind. He did not ask Peter to unmask. Not yet. Peter left through the station roof. Styles waited outside. What happened? Peter looked. He knows enough. Styles's face changed. Everything. No. Are you okay? Peter thought. Yeah. That surprised him. The secret had become smaller in one way. Not gone. Shared with someone whose job was protecting the town. The next morning, the sheriff moved the fake web investigation off the public suspect board. No exoneration. No accusation. Evidence under review. Spider-Man remained legally complicated. Peter preferred that to being trusted blindly. A police bag containing one genuine comparison strand left the station later. Peter watched from a roof. This time, the chain of custody was intact. That was progress. Sheriff Stalinsky made Peter sit through a real evidence review because he had complained that superhero investigations were too vibes-based. Peter regretted the phrase immediately. The sheriff did not. You want to help with evidence? Fine. He placed 4 folders on a conference table after hours. No confidential civilian identities Peter did not need. Photos. Timelines. Chain of custody logs. Styles sat beside Peter with the expression of someone attending a sporting event. His father pointed. Case 1, you tell me what you know. Peter opened. A web strand at an assault scene. He almost said fake. Stopped. What did he know? White protein-like fiber, knotted, found on scene. Good. Pattern differs from how I usually deploy. Usually. Peter sighed. Fine, from every genuine sample you've documented so far. The sheriff nodded. Better. Styles smiled. Peter kicked his chair. Second folder. A red residue near evidence seal. Peter said. Material similar to the perception-dampening filament Deaton tested. Similar. Not lab-confirmed yet. The sheriff nodded again. This was the point. Peter's notebook used strong conclusions too quickly sometimes. Police paperwork punished that. Third folder. A blurry camera image. Peter stared. The hooded figure could be anyone. Height range broad. No face. Styles started to say something. Sheriff raised one finger. Styles shut up. Peter said, Unknown person. Thank you. Fourth folder. A timeline gap. Evidence bag moved from scene to station. Camera unavailable for 6 minutes. One deputy signature. Styles immediately said, Deputy's compromised. Sheriff looked at him. No. Styles frowned. He's the only one. He's the only documented person. Peter smiled. Styles glared. The deputy might be innocent. Someone could have accessed bag before or after. Camera gap could be engineered. Signature could be copied. The sheriff made them list alternate explanations before ranking. Peter hated. Useful. At the end, Sheriff Stalinsky leaned back. Supernatural cases are still cases. Styles said, some have demons. Demons can contaminate evidence too. Peter laughed. The sheriff looked at him. You think I'm joking? He wasn't. The practice changed Peter's field behavior. At the next suspicious scene, he stopped moving everything. A warehouse door had red filament around handle. Old Peter would web it shut or tear it off. Peter photographed. Marked distance. Called sheriff. Waited. A forensic tech in gloves collected after Deaton, advised remotely. No contamination by Peter's web. Inside they found ordinary criminal evidence plus supernatural gear. Because Peter had not destroyed the entrance, the sheriff could prove forced access by someone else earlier. That mattered legally. Spider-Man had often thought leaving evidence meant leaving danger active. Sometimes it did. Sometimes securing and documenting was enough. The sheriff taught him to distinguish. A month later, Peter found a body. No spider-sense urgency. Already dead. The scene looked supernatural because of claw marks. He landed nearby. Stopped before touching. Cold. Sheriff arrived. Anything. Peter pointed from distance. Claw-like marks. No movement. No obvious immediate threat. The sheriff looked at him. You didn't touch. Learning. They found the claws were metal tools, not werewolf. A human murderer trying to redirect suspicion. If Peter had treated the marks as proof and called Derek, the wrong conflict might have started. Instead, evidence stayed. The killer's tool, marks matched a workshop later. Case progressed. Peter got no dramatic victory. The sheriff arrested the suspect days later. Peter heard from Styles. That was enough. Their relationship became stranger as the sheriff knew more. Peter sometimes arrived masked at scenes. Sometimes as Peter when Styles was involved. The sheriff refused to let the distinction manipulate procedure. If Spider-Man witnesses something, Spider-Man gives a statement. Peter stared. How? Written anonymous statement through me, if identity risk is real. That's legal. Complicated. Peter smiled. Welcome to my life. The sheriff did not smile. You don't get to use complicated as exemption. Fair. Peter wrote statements. Short. Factual. No dramatic language. Observed. Unknown. Likely. Unverified. Styles called them boring. Peter started enjoying that. Boring meant a judge could read it without hearing about destiny. One night, after a long review, Sheriff Stilinski gave Peter a paper cup of bad station coffee. Peter tasted. This is terrible. You're 17. You gave it to me. I forgot. Styles walked in. My father contributing to juvenile caffeine dependency. The sheriff took the cup back. Peter looked betrayed. The scene felt absurdly normal. The sheriff still might arrest Spider-Man someday for the right thing. Peter still broke laws. They were not pretending otherwise. But they had built enough working trust that evidence stopped vanishing into the gap between supernatural secrecy and human procedure. That mattered to the town more than whether Spider-Man and the sheriff were officially allies. Neither used the word. Good. Asterisk Chapter 41. The Spider That Spoke Its Name. The apartment fire above Main Street found Peter before the mask did. He was walking with Scott when smoke rolled from a third-floor window. The fire department had arrived. People pointed. Peter's spider sense screamed. He looked up. Styles's Jeep was parked outside. Scott saw it too. Styles. Peter ran into the alley. Mask from backpack. There was no time for the full suit. He pulled on the face, covering, and gloves. Scott went through the front with firefighters as a civilian who knew someone inside. Peter climbed outside wall. Third floor. The window was blocked by flame. Spider sense pointed left. He broke through the adjacent apartment instead. Empty. Webbed a line across the hallway ceiling and swung past a burning section. The suit fabric singed. Styles's voice. Peter. Not Spider-Man. Peter froze. Styles was trapped beneath a fallen shelf. Smoke. Fire. He had called Peter's name because he expected Peter, not Mask. Spider-Man landed. Yeah. Styles looked at the mask. Then his voice. No room for pretending. Little help. Peter lifted the shelf. Styles crawled. A beam fell. Peter caught. The memory hit hard. Library fire. Alias. The trapped boy. Burning beam between exit. For half a second Peter was not in Beacon Hills. Smoke covered a school corridor. His hands were ordinary. No web. No second chance. Styles shouted. Peter. The name snapped him back. He threw the beam aside. Webbed the ceiling support. Move. They went. The hallway shifted. Spider-Sense screamed from behind. A fireball of collapsing debris. Peter shoved Styles through a doorway. Took part across his back. His mask tore along the jaw. Styles saw skin. Already new. No issue. Scott appeared through smoke. Eyes briefly wolf-bright. He grabbed Styles. Peter held the ceiling line. Go. Scott moved. Peter followed when the firefighters reached the floor. They escaped through a side window before anyone could film Scott's eyes. Outside, Stiles coughed on the curb. Sheriff Stalinsky arrived. He saw his son, then Spider-Man on the adjacent roof. Peter stayed just long enough to know Stiles was breathing. The sheriff looked up. Their eyes met through white lenses. A silent acknowledgement. Peter left. At school the next day, Scott found Peter at the back stairwell. "You froze." Peter looked away. Scott had seen. "The beam." "Yeah." "Why?" Peter almost said nothing, then thought of the pool conversation. Independence did not require isolation. "I died in a fire." Scott went completely still. Peter continued before fear stopped him. "Before this life." Scott's face changed from confusion to disbelief. Peter whispered, "My name was Elias." The first time he said it aloud in Beacon Hills. The hallway felt too bright. Scott did not laugh. "Reincarnation. I guess. You remember everything." "Does Stiles know?" "No." "May?" "No." Scott looked. "Why me?" Peter leaned against the wall. "Because you saw me freeze." That was the answer. He did not give full life history. Just the truth needed to make the moment understandable. Scott took it carefully. "So the fire. Sometimes it feels like both are happening." Scott nodded. Werewolf trauma worked differently. Still trauma. He understood. Peter said, "Do not tell anyone." "I won't." No hesitation. The old identity stayed private. One person knew. That felt enormous. Later Stiles asked why Peter had frozen. Peter told a smaller truth. "Fire scares me more than most things." Stiles accepted. He did not need Elias yet. Different layers. The apartment fire became a public Spider-Man story. A torn mask. A child lifted through a window. A firefighter claimed the vigilante held the ceiling. The real scene that stayed with Peter was Stiles using his name through smoke. Not Spider-Man. Peter. Then Scott learning Elias existed. The mask had protected identity. The friendship had protected the person underneath. Different jobs. Peter stopped asking one thing to do both. Fire training became part of Peter's routine after the apartment rescue. Not because he wanted to recreate Elias' death. Because avoiding all fire scenes would let the memory choose for him. The fire department did public safety drills. Peter attended as Peter Parker first. Learned extinguisher types. Smoke behavior. Door temperature. Crawling low. Not superhero material. Useful. Sheriff connected him quietly with one firefighter who knew Spider-Man occasionally assisted and did not ask for the face. Captain Ruiz. The first private drill happened in a training structure with cold theatrical smoke. Peter wore the mask. No flame. Ruiz said, "You don't get to freelance inside my building." Peter almost smiled. Understood. The drill objective. Find 2 weighted dummies while following incident command. Peter's spider sense reacted to falling training props. Not smoke itself. He listened. Ruiz radio. Search left room. Peter went left, even though he could move faster through wall. Found dummy. Web harness. Ruiz stopped him. Too high underarms. Peter adjusted. May's rescue practice had taught. Second dummy near blocked hall. Peter wanted rip obstruction. Ruiz said, check load. Ceiling support compromised. Peter looked. His strength could remove wrong piece and collapse structure. Instead, he webbed support first, then moved obstruction. Good. The smoke thickened. Peter's memory flashed. Red light. Burning beam. He stopped. Ruiz's voice in radio. Spider status. Peter hated the call sign. Still answered. Paused. Reason. Memory. Ruiz did not ask. Can continue. Peter checked. Yes. Continue. No shame. He found dummy. Exited. Time slower than Peter wanted. Everyone survived because dummies. Ruiz reviewed. You kept trying to outrun the search pattern. I can move faster. Then move faster inside the pattern. That was the lesson. Speed did not excuse coordination. Second drill, Peter improved. Third included actual controlled heat. Not flame near him initially. His body reacted. He named. Heat. Ruiz acknowledged. No one turned it into therapy session. Peter kept. Months later, a real fire occurred. Peter arrived after firefighters. He reported. Spider-Man available. What do you need? Ruiz looked only briefly surprised. Fourth floor window. One possible occupant. Do not breach west wall. Clear. Peter went. The structure burned. Memory rose. But there was an external voice and a plan he had agreed to. He found the occupant. Carried through the route firefighters expected. No beam surprise. No solo improvisation unless necessary. Outside, Ruiz said. Good. Peter looked at flames. The old school corridor remained in memory. It had not vanished. He had built more exits around it. Scott later learned Peter trained with firefighters. You have a lot of adults now. Peter laughed. Apparently. That was another difference from Elias. Elias had entered smoke because adults were on the other side and a child was trapped. Peter still moved toward danger. Now he had people teaching him how not to make every rescue an isolated act of will. That might be the most important power he gained in Beacon Hills. Chapter 42, The Weight of Watching. The false moon over the preserve was the Nojitsune's best trick because everyone knew it was false and still reacted. The sky looked wrong. Too bright. Shadows pointed in two directions. Styles stood somewhere inside the maze of paths. Or the Nojitsune did. Scott's pack had one objective. Separate the spirit without killing Styles. No one said, whatever it takes. They had learned. Peter webbed the preserved paths before the confrontation. Not traps designed to bind Styles. Guidelines. If illusion changed landmarks, the physical web connections between trees could provide consistent routes. Lydia carried one line. Scott another. Peter held the hub. Derek waited farther. The Nojitsune laughed through Styles's voice. You built a web. Spider-Man answered from the trees. Occupational hazard. The false moon shifted. Every web line appeared doubled. Peter closed his eyes. Touch. The real strand had tension. Illusion did not. He moved by hand. Scott followed scent and heartbeat. Lydia followed the scream under the silence. Different senses. No one tool could be spoofed the same way. The first fake Styles appeared at a fork. Scott stopped. The figure said, please. Peter's spider sense screamed. Lydia shook her head. Not him. They passed. Second appeared injured. Derek almost moved. Peter held the line. Check. Scott listened. No heartbeat. Pass. Third was real. They knew because Lydia cried before seeing him. Styles stood under the false moon. Eyes wrong. But heartbeat. Body. The Nojitsun smiled. Now what? Scott stepped forward. The spirit held a blade near Styles's own throat. Everyone stopped. Self-hostage. Peter felt the old moral trap. Act and risk, person. Wait and let spirit control. He looked for another lane. Web. One strand ran behind Styles through a branch. Peter had placed it earlier. Loose. An ally could pull without knowing why. Derek's training idea had become real. Peter looked at Lydia. She saw. Not a plan spoken. She took the line. Peter moved left. The Nojitsun tracked him. Lydia pulled right. The branch shifted. A shower of wet leaves struck Styles's face. Tiny distraction. Scott moved. Caught the knife wrist. Derek hit the other side. Peter webbed the blade away. No full force hit on Styles. The spirit screamed. Then split the illusion. Dozens of Styles' faces. Peter's spider sense became useless static. He stopped listening to it. Scott. Real one here. Lydia. Same. Peter trusted. He webbed the area around Scott's voice, creating a soft containment shell around the real body while ignoring the others. The illusions attacked. No physical impact. The real body thrashed. Derek held feet. Scott held shoulders. Lydia spoke to Styles. Not the spirit. Peter reinforced web only where necessary. The Nojitsun used Peter's own voice next. A full Spider-Man appeared in the trees. Kill him. Derek looked. Peter almost laughed despite. Bad impression. The false voice became Elia's. Not because the spirit knew the name. Scott now knew perhaps the Nojitsun could access Styles, not Scott, so it should not know Elia's. It couldn't use that. Good. It used May's voice instead from Styles's observations. Peter, come home. Peter's chest tightened. Still not enough. He kept. The spirit fed on chaos. They gave structure. Lydia repeated present facts. Scott repeated Styles's name. Peter counted web tensions. Derek watched physical body. No one argued about what they were seeing. The false moon flickered. For 1 second, the real sky appeared. Then Styles screamed. Something dark pulled from him, but did not fully separate. The ritual needed one more step at the Nemeton/train station. They had weakened. Not one. The spirit retreated, using Styles's body. Peter had a clean shot to web the ankles. He could chase. Lydia grabbed his wrist. Don't. Peter looked. She heard something else. A trap ahead. He trusted. They let the Nojitsun go temporarily. Derek looked furious. Scott looked worse. Peter said, "We have the route." The guide lines through the forest remained. The spirit had revealed direction. Toward the train station and Nemeton. The next confrontation would be final if they could make it. Back at the road, Peter removed every web anchor they no longer needed. He did not leave the preserve, full of trip lines for hikers. Styles was possessed somewhere ahead. Still, Peter cleaned the route behind. Small responsibility, inside enormous crisis. Scott noticed. You can leave those. No. Why? Because someone else still lives here tomorrow. Scott looked toward the false moon fading. Then helped. They removed the last line together. Asterisk chapter 43, The Stranger. The train station had been abandoned long enough that every sound felt borrowed. Whined through broken glass. Loose metal tapping. Water dripping somewhere below. Peter's spider sense did not point. It filled the space. Styles was inside. The Nojitsune was inside Styles. The Nemeton pressure ran under the place like a buried wire. Scott stood beside Peter in the dark. Lydia farther back. Derek and Allison covering opposite entries. No one had a complete plan. That was better than pretending. Peter wore the mask, but the lower seam had already torn from the preserve fight. Styles knew his face. Scott knew. The mask's purpose tonight was cameras, distant witnesses, and the small psychological separation Peter still needed when becoming the person who moved first. Lydia whispered, "He's here." A laugh answered from the platform. Styles stepped into the dim light. Human body. Wrong smile. You brought everyone. Scott said, "We're taking you home." The Nojitsune laughed. Which one? The station changed. Not physically all at once. Perception. Peter saw 3 platforms. Then 5. Tracks splitting into impossible directions. The spider sense fired on all of them. Useless. He grabbed the web line, already attached to Scott's belt. Physical. Real. Lydia touched the station wall. Don't follow what it shows. Derek said from the other side, heartbeat stays center. Good. The Nojitsune moved. Styles's body appeared on platform 2. Scott followed heartbeat. Peter followed Scott's line. Allison followed Peter's physical position. Lydia followed the scream beneath. Layered. The spirit tried to split them. A false Derek attacked Peter from the left. Spider Sense screamed. Peter did not dodge until the image displaced dust. It didn't. Illusion. He let it pass through. The false claws felt real enough to trigger his body, but no wound followed. He kept moving. Styles threw something. Real knife. This displaced air. Peter ducked. Webbed the knife. Real enough. The Nojitsune smiled. They reached center platform. There were 2 Styles now. Scott listened. Both heartbeats. The spirit had learned. Lydia screamed. One image flickered. Peter looked. That one. Scott moved. The false body shattered into shadow. The real Styles ran toward the tunnel. Peter swung ahead. The tunnel was narrow. One exit. He hated it. Spider sense spiked. He stopped before entering. Scott nearly collided. What? Peter looked above. Maintenance catwalk. Another route. Not tunnel. They went over. The Nojitsune had rigged the tunnel with mountain ash, wires, and explosive charges stolen from hunter supplies. Not enough to kill Spider-Man maybe. Enough to trap Scott and Derek. The catwalk bypassed. Derek's earlier lesson again. Look for the door not offered. They dropped beyond the trap. Styles was waiting near the Nemeton root chamber beneath the station. The spirit's final game was sacrifice. A bound stranger. A hunter. A student. 3 people in separate directions. Maybe illusions. Maybe not. Peter's sense screamed at all. The Nojitsun said, "Choose." Peter felt Elias' last day rise in him. The younger boy behind the display case. Adults on the other side. One route. No time. A choice. He had died because one person needed him. He would do it again. But this time, there were people beside him. Peter said, "No." The Nojitsun smiled. "No." Peter pointed. Scott left, Allison right, Derek center, Lydia stays with me. The spirit's smile vanished. Not one chooser. Many. Everyone moved. The student was an illusion. Allison discovered fast. The hunter was real. Derek freed him. The stranger on left was real and injured. Scott carried. Peter and Lydia stayed on Styles. No sacrifice. No single hero forced to decide whose life mattered. The Nojitsun attacked with Styles's body. Peter dodged. Lydia called his real name. Scott returned. Derek. Allison. Everyone closed. The spirit's advantage shrank as the stage choice failed. Peter used web not to bind Styles completely, but to create a soft cage around the platform edges. No falls. No accidental, lethal movement. Scott and Derek controlled limbs. Allison removed hidden blades. Lydia kept speaking. Styles. The Nojitsun snarled. Styles's own voice broke through. Shut up. Lydia almost laughed through tears. That's him. Peter pulled the damaged mask up enough for Styles to see his mouth. Hey. Styles looked. The spirit tried to twist his face. Peter said, "Your first evidence board had 3 pictures of people who were obviously not Spider-Man." A weak laugh. Real. You were one of them. That hurts. Scott said, "Stay." Derek held. Lydia screamed again. The sound struck something supernatural rather than physical. The Nojitsun peeled away. Not clean. Darkness twisted through the station. The Nemeton roots beneath pulsed. Peter's spider sense became a white flame.